I've done some movies such as Arm Wrestling Roulette, Inhabitants. I've helped numerous other people on their projects. People have always asked me why I wanted to get into making movies, and I thought to myself, well, I just do it because it's fun. It's something I've been doing for a long time, and I figured maybe I should ask some other people and get their opinions on why they make movies and some of the struggles and information and things that the general public just doesn't know about the movies that we make, being the low budget, indie, whatever you want to call it, no budget, cheesy B movies, whatever you want to call it. So sit back and enjoy. Maybe you'll walk away with something you didn't know and a new appreciation for the pain and sweat and blood and tears that go into these low budget movies.
I'm Roman Ricci, aka Dr. Primo, aka Thirsty D, and I'm the director of such films as Summertime Flick and A Boat Trip.
My name is Daniel Brooks, and this is my involvement with micro and low budget independent filmmaking.
I am Nathan Hine, also known as Harry Collins, and I am an independent or underground filmmaker.
Matty Calhoun. I'm the director of a paranormal documentary, Dead End Drive, Death Dummy, Dream Reapers, and quite a few others.
I'm Melissa Sapienza. I have experience in acting, special effects makeup, and assistant directing. Some of the projects I have been a part of has been Arm Wrestling Roulette, Death Lord, and The House That Eats Flesh.
My name is Gary Lee Vincent. I've been a filmmaker now for almost 7 years, author, publisher, and producer now for over a decade.
What's up, guys? My name is Solon Sangaris, and all of this hardware around me is representative of the movie side of my business.
The love of films. The love of films. Just the love of making films. You know, at this point in time, it's more of a hobby. But just getting out there and making films.
Some of my inspirations growing up, particularly, was a lot of the indie filmmakers. Now, I did not know that at the time because growing up as a little child, I couldn't tell the difference. I couldn't differentiate what made a large, multi-million-dollar budgeted film or opposed to something that was made for $12. I really couldn't tell the difference. As I grew older, in 1999, I had seen the Blair Witch Project, and then by that point, I was already 18 years old, and I had a better understanding of what filmmaking was. But I didn't realize anyone could just go out and do it. I didn't realize there was people out there with camcorders, running around just making films because they enjoyed it. I never thought of that as a concept. So when Blair Witch came out, I realized wow, this is amazing. These are people that made, now I wouldn't consider that a micro budget film, but very low budget. I mean, anything, $1 million, $2 million or less is going to be low budget, but this is something that was made for considerably less. And I realized that, wow, this is something that I could possibly get involved with in the future. Movies like Motel Hell, which got rented a lot. Movies like Basket Case and Basket Case 2, Frankenhooker, and many other films that were very, very low budgeted films, as well as I would rent a lot of full moon feature films.
Horror films were a huge part of my life from the very start, and that played a part of me being a filmmaker, definitely. My father was a huge horror movie fan, and so was my mom. And she would record all sorts of horror movies for us, like the Universal stuff, like The Creature from Black Lagoon and Frankenstein, and just all the classics. And I remember, really loving those films quite a bit. I remember her reading this description about some people that were stuck in a farmhouse surrounded by zombies, flesh-eating zombies, and that instantly, kind of sparked my interest. So, after seeing that film, it just totally changed me. It just scared the shit out of us. And I also grew up watching creature features on a Saturday mornings, and watching Crater Lake Monster and Yorga the Vampire and Zombie Lake, and all these exploitation and cheap films. And I remember laughing because I never saw cheap films like that made, and I couldn't believe that they were being played on TV, because I was used to like A-Team and all these MASH and all these Hollywood productions, and they were playing these low-budget horror films on TV, so it kind of sparked my interest. But it wasn't until I saw Dawn of the Dead that really changed me. It turned me into a gore hound. Seeing that explicit type of violence on screen was just it was terrifying. I never saw anything like that before. Seeing people devoured and eaten by corpses, zombies. So that was the groundbreaking film that kind of turned me into a gore hound, and a lot of respect for George Romero.
I would say my inspirations, wouldn't say I have any idols, but my inspirations are probably like John Carpenter. I'm not a huge fan of a Halloween shirt on and stuff, but I mean, that's not my favorite horror movie, but I like it. But John Carpenter is probably like the biggest Hollywood horror film director that I would say was my inspiration. George Romero as well. But I've been filming, like shot on video movies since the mid 90s. And I would say, especially over the past like 20 years or so, the Polonia brothers were probably my main inspiration, as well as some others from that era, from like the late 80s, early 90s, the shot on video stuff. I would say they're probably my most, the ones that inspired me the most over the years.
Like, it's hard. That's a really hard question, just because I've always gravitated towards at least indie horror and horror filming. I've always loved scary movies, and getting a taste of acting, starting off as early as creating home videos with family and being a victim there and putting blood capsules in my mouth, and but for inspiration, like Heather Langenkamp, Lisa Wilcox, Neve Campbell, my God.
This might sound a bit odd, but as a kid, I really liked watching Chuck Norris movies. I liked action movies and martial arts films. I really enjoyed him, and I liked watching a lot of the types of ideals that he stood for, both in his films and as a person in real life. So I would say Chuck was probably one of my big inspirations as a child, watching films and seeing how things were done. And then as I had a chance to work with John Russo in the publishing realm, to be quite honest, I had never seen Night of the Living Dead when I first started working with John Russo. I obviously watched it during our workings together, because that's all people kept talking about. But I will say that I've grown a very fond appreciation to his genius, to his insights. The man can just write a novel anytime he wants, just sits down, and a couple days later, boom, there's a whole story. He has a gift with words, and I do know that he has the experience to learn from. And so I think anybody that could tour with John, like I have, and to gain knowledge of the whole making of films like Night of the Living Dead and Return of the Living Dead and Midnight and Heartstopper and The Majorettes and various other properties that he has done, even the 1990 remake of Night of the Living Dead. So all these things he has stories about. So as a filmmaker, where I was mentioned as a kid, I liked to watch Chuck Norris films, but as a filmmaker, I found that learning from John Russo gave me insights to how not only story-driven films are made, but also independent or low-budget films are made. It's one thing to watch very famous filmmakers like Steven Spielberg or Martin Scorsese to know how to make these really classic mega buck films. But I also realized, me being from West Virginia and not having the same sphere of mentors that those folks may have had, and the resources that those folks may have to make great big budget films, I did have access to John Russo. So keeping it real, I'd say he was one of the bigger influences in that perspective.
A micro-budget film is basically having no money and using pure imagination, and just the desire to get up and make something with as little as possible, making the most out of nothing.
What do I consider a micro-budget film, and what does it consist of? So, again, when it comes to like low-budget films, it could be something that even goes into the millions, but when it comes to micro-budget, I would consider that something that would probably be about $10,000 or less, or roughly around that range. I don't think a lot of people realize the costs that come into even something that's a no-budget film. Now, of course, anyone that wants to make a film, I highly suggest do it. If you're even considering it, get yourself a camera, get yourself a light, get yourself a microphone, and get out there and just make a movie. Just do it. You'll learn as you go. But as for micro budget, I would say that's something quite small on the budgeted side. But not even just that. So when it comes to the cast, the crew, what I consider a micro budget film is something that's very limited on that. It would usually have a very small cast, usually particularly a very small crew, and people that wear many hats.
It all depends on what you mean by micro budget now. And when I did my first movie, it was $100,000 budget to make With All Thy Getting, which was never released, and I have a copy of it. They considered $100,000 a zero budget back then. So, micro budget, considering the advances in technology, there's going to be a hell of a lot more micro, zero, low budget movies. And the stuff that Hollywood's putting out nowadays, and I think this is going to be what's going to really boost the micro, zero, low budget, independent, that's the key word, independent movies, is the baloney that's going on the left coast, the Hollywood thing, where everything's got to be formula, where everything has to be, I don't want to say politically correct, but inoffensive, and it's got to check all the boxes. That's going to be the downfall of the left coast Hollywood big budget movies. No, they're going to come out with big budget movies that are going to be spectacular, special effects laden, amazing visual movies. But where's the story? Where's a cohesive, followable plot that makes sense? That is what's going to make the independent zero to low budget movie pop. That's what it's going to do. It's going to, again, with the available technology, with cameras, microphones, recording gear, that's what's going to make the independent movie mainstream. And I hate to say that.
A micro-budget film. Let's see, I've never really had much of a budget for a film, so I can't really compare. I would say a micro-budget, though, would be, let's put it this way, I think the most I've spent on a movie was maybe a couple $1,000s, and that's you know, just throwing stuff here and there, you know, into the budget. Usually props are what's the most expensive. And lucky enough, I've had some friends that have, you know, been generous enough to buy props for them, you know, and then we use it, we share props and stuff. That's probably the biggest thing is props. But micro budget, I would say anything just, you know, a few $100 to a couple $1,000. To some directors, it might be a few, you know, $20,000. I don't know. But for me, you know, I've made a movie on $50, you know, and then go around and get a limited release of it and make, you know, 10 times that. So it's, you know, I'm not bragging, but it's just, you know, that's pretty much a micro budget film. If you can make a movie for nothing or next to nothing and make some money off of it, that's great. If you don't make money off of it, that's great too. It's just trying to get your films out there is the most important thing, in my opinion, and having fun.
A micro-budget film consists of enough of a desire to take a bunch of your friends and make a story on film and edit it yourself and do all the artwork yourself, and at the end have a complete product without too much intervention. A micro-budget film for me is almost the same answer as a no-budget film. But most people need some kind of monetary amount. So we would say a micro-budget film, in my definition, would be something for $10,000 or less. Most of these films will be made much lower than that. For example, my film Desk Clerk was made for $5,000 and under, which is fairly low budget, if you know what I mean, considering a SAG-AFTRA definition of a micro-low budget film is something under $250,000.
Well, usually sitting around with a bunch of people at a bar drinking and tossing around a bunch of ideas, that's usually where it comes from for me. You know, that's where the creativity comes from. It usually comes out of a bottle, but that doesn't matter where it comes from because a lot of good ideas come from that. I started writing all this good stuff, but then all kind of things went wrong. Actors wouldn't show up, things got canceled and all them, so the script went right in the shitter. So after that, I said, nah, we're not going to waste time doing that, especially dealing with micro-budgeted issues. So what we do is we kind of just roll with the flow. We have an idea, and we just take it from there and go. Now there are if I have certain actors that I know are absolutely dependable, I'll have the idea, and I will have dialogue written out for specific scenes that must be done. But some of it's ad-libbed. It's a combination of ad-libbing with a specific idea. But if there's certain scenes that actually have to have a point, I will have written dialogue. But everything can be worked with. You know, you can work around because there's always something's going to change. People don't show, something goes wrong. You know, certain locations you might not be able to get.
The idea to make a movie. As I said before, I've been inspired since I was a child. You know, watching horror films on TV. It's just fun getting together with some friends and come up with stuff on the fly, and filming is my favorite. It's just a good time, and like I said, you film it, you have a good time doing it, and then you get together and watch it after you're all done and kind of chuckle and laugh at stuff. It's just fun, and it's mainly why we do it. It depends. I mean, starting with a title, it depends. I mean, sometimes I'll come up with some titles just for fun, and then I've made some movies over some like fake ideas or fake titles for a slasher. But it basically just we'll film something and most of the time come up with the title afterwards. Just seeing how the film goes and what happens in the movie, and we usually just try to come up with some goofy title for it. My writing process, it's kind of a joke, because to be honest, I've never really actually written a script or written a plot out. It's usually a lot of it's just kind of filming on the fly. Excuse me, kind of filming on the fly. But there have been some films for sure where I've gotten together with a friend or two and we've written a short outline of our ideas, and then you go and film around that and include those ideas, and so you have a little bit of structure. You have to have some structure. So I mean, it is a good idea to actually put some notes down. I'll put it that way.
When it comes to the storytelling part, I think of the main character first. The main character, and what their intentions are, what their personality, and then branch out and create a timeline for them. I just kind of jump into it. and just start writing, drafting. But, as I mentioned, it's focusing on the character that I have in mind, and the timeline that's involved.
I really didn't know what I was going to make a film about, so I took an experience that I had with an ex-girlfriend in this toxic relationship we had, and I kind of based the story around that, like a personal story, which, to this day, Last Days of Livermore is one of my most personable films.
Well, the title sometimes is already there. For example, Midnight was already a built franchise for John Russo. So when he said, "Do you want to remake Midnight?" that title was already there. But if we look at other scenarios, films that I have made, such as Faded Memories, the idea was to make a film about someone who was dealing with Alzheimer's disease and dementia, and who was struggling to find hope. His son was looking for some kind of way to help his dad, and they seek help at the Veterans Affairs through an experimental drug project. And then the drug gives the father his memory back for just a short time, but it also gives him combat instincts. And in his delusional mind, he decides to start killing people. So we were making a lot of different ideas in this, and the idea of Faded Memories seemed to go very well for that movie. So sometimes you're already into the project a little bit before the title comes, and sometimes it's at the beginning. It just depends. The storyboards I do not create, though a lot of people do. I think that if I had at least access to some more artists, the storyboarding would be better for me, because it would help set up shots in advance and know how the angles you want to look on camera. For me personally, it usually involves setting up first a treatment, which is a couple pages saying this is what the story should be. And then from the treatment, I will either bust them out into chapters and say this is what happens in each chapter. Now notice that I say chapters and not scenes. For me personally, I typically write a book first. So I will do a small book, like a novella or a novel, and then we will send that around to our buddies and filmmakers and stuff to see if they read that, do they feel there's a movie there? If there is, then I'll go back and begin the script part of it. Now, in movies like Faded Memories, or in films which are done quite quickly, we'll skip that book step of mine, and I will go straight into outlining. And the way I outline is I use a spreadsheet like Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel. I will lay out core blocks of action that needs to happen. So in those core blocks of action, I will then identify key players or the actors that we will need, and I'll put that in the notes. So I end up building it visually inside of a spreadsheet. Before then, when I was doing only novels, I sometimes would use diagram programs like Visio so that I could move boxes around, and of what pieces of action needed to occur to get the story to flow. And that was especially important when working on series, because I had to keep a much larger storyline in mind, not just the single episodic piece.
No crowdfunding, none of that bullshit. The idea is to make a film with as little as possible. That way, you can't help but make money. If you make something for as little as possible, you can't help but make money. Like, where's that? Paranormal documentary. That film costs about, $50 to make? You can't help but make money. It did really well on Amazon Prime before the woke people complained that it was a little bit on the, homophobic side. then it got some complaints, but it did killer business up until then. Did excellent business in England. She couldn't help but make money when something was only cost $50 to make.
When it comes to making one of these films, though, the question is, how much money do you need? So, it depends. One of the things is I wouldn't let that be a hindrance. on making your film, because everyone's going to make something different. And one of the things I think I like most about independent filmmaking is you don't have the involvement of those large production companies that are looking at, of course, making their money back on the film. So they're often, you'll see these with larger budget films, is money is being tossed out by production companies saying, hey, here's funds, but we like what you did with this, and this, but we want you to go ahead and change a few things. And eventually the film doesn't become yours. With micro and low budget filming, you don't see a lot of that happening. So I very much enjoy that. I know when I'm watching a low budget, micro budget film, that I know they've put their heart, their soul, blood, sweat, and tears, often very actual real blood, in there to make sure these films are getting made. They don't just make them for themselves, they do make them for everyone else to be entertained by. And I think that is an amazing thing, to put your work out there, to put your craft out there. It's an art form. It is very much an art form that goes very much unappreciated. But of course, again, there's going to money is going to be needed from time to time. So in general, a lot of the films that I've worked on have had that budget around $10,000. Sometimes they go a little bit more than that, and often they actually go a lot less than that. Not intentionally, but it's just sometimes we just want to get out there. We want to make a film, and we're going to do it. And we say, hey, let's show up these weekends. We got a script. Let's just shoot it. And that's stuff that I actually have a lot of fun on. There's some silly little films that we've done, I think were some of the most enjoyable to make because we didn't have a lot of those stresses of getting out there and making something that's very, very expensive and with a lot of involvement. So we do use crowdfunding, usually Indiegogo, which seems to work out okay for the most part. We would set our goal. Sometimes when crowdfunding is put out there, often you'll see that immediately right away, as soon as you launch that campaign, that it doesn't pick up steam quickly. A lot of the crowdfunding money that's raised in these Indiegogos, in these crowdfunding, is really in the last couple of days. Sometimes within the last couple of hours, you'll start to see it pick up quite a bit. So don't fret if you are putting some kind of crowdfunding out there like Indiegogo or any kind of other campaigns. Just know that it may not pick up steam right away. But they do work. They definitely help when it comes to setting up how you want to get it. You're not just saying, hey, send us some money, give us some money, we want to make a film. You offer up perks, you offer up things like pre-sales of the DVD, and things like t-shirts, buttons, pins, autographed items are always very nice. People tend to pick those up. Screen used items, could be things like something that was used to kill someone on set, that kind of thing. People tend to enjoy those items. We've had the opportunity on a few of the films that I've worked on to have some amazing stars of the film that were in a lot of these movies from the 80s that we were huge fans of, like Nightmare on Elm Street 4, Sleepaway Camp, Return of the Living Dead. So getting to have these actresses and actors on set and getting their signatures definitely help with the crowdfunding. To get those items out there. And of course, when people start to see the involvement of some of these actors and actresses on there, it tends to pick up on the crowdfunding as well too. It's one of the things that helps raise those funds to get your film made.
When it comes to funding, budgets and all that, to be honest, it usually comes straight out of my own pocket, or me and a friend or something. I've never really been one to be for like crowdfunding or Indiegogo, that kind of stuff. To me, if you, this is my own opinion, but to me, if you're an indie filmmaker, you shouldn't have to rely on other people giving you a bunch of money for it. You should have that passion to go out and make it. And I understand stuff costs money. Props especially cost money. Actors cost money. It does cost money, but in the long run, I've never really been much of a supporter for somebody who has to beg for money to make a movie. Just go out and make it. Especially if you're a brand new director or filmmaker, you should not, can't be counting on somebody else to pay for your film. You need to go out, learn how to make a film yourself, and do it that way. And when you gain a little bit of popularity or get some fame behind your name, then it's time, maybe if you need some help, people can give you some cash, And I truly believe, though, if you're going to do that, you need to pay back your fans in some way or another, which a lot of filmmakers do by giving them props, DVDs, whatever, etc. But yeah, for me personally, though, I've never been into crowdfunding. I've never really found somebody to fund my movies. It's been pretty much out of my own pocket, and until I get rich and famous, we'll see if that ever happens. That's how it's going to be.
Being realistic, a film can be made and distributed anywhere from as low as $3 to $5 grand up into 50 or so more. It just depends on what kind of product you want to put out and realistically what can you accomplish. There's anything from your Indiegogos, Kickstarters, when it comes to crowdfunding. And one of the biggest things that you can do as a filmmaker is network. Getting to know people, introducing yourself, giving yourself opportunities to meet these potential producers that would, then you can kind of feel out the kind of team that you want to help, bring your vision to life.
Doing these campaigns and stealing fans' money and not delivering on the film, either not making it or spending the money on other things than the film. And I just think it's I think it's just kind of become a saturated and kind of shitty scene. I mean, there is lots of good filmmakers, and it really pisses me off to see deserving filmmakers like Brian Paulin and Michael Todd Snyder and Eric Stanzi that just have a really hard time scraping by getting a budget for their films, and they're amazing directors. And then there's like nobodies out there that are doing campaigns making $50,000 and they never even made a film. They're just like a podcaster or something, or a filmmaker that just pumps out crap.
The subject of funding in a film is always talked about on every film. I wish that was not the case, but it is. My first foray into making a film myself was My Uncle John is a Zombie, and that one we used Indiegogo. We had budgeted $30,000 to make it. We were not even coming close to that, so we lowered the threshold from 30 to 10 to allow Indiegogo to let it be from 1 month to 2 months. We raised approximately $5,000, and one of the film's producers, Michelle Bowser, donated $5,000 to make the film. So we had to go into making My Uncle John is a Zombie, which we thought would be $30,000, for only $10,000. In the making of that film, we spent a whole lot more, and most of it came from producers like Michelle, like myself, and also like the co-director Robert Lucas, and also an exorbitant amount of time by the film's other co-director and writer, John Russo. So in that example, crowdfunding was used. In many of the projects that I supported, like some of the stuff that Brad Twigg does and various other filmmakers that I've worked with, I have donated to Indiegogo campaigns to help them, as I know that there is a place for that in Kickstarter and different ones out there. So that sometimes is the way that these films get made. It is not my preferred way. If you can get hooked up with a producer, and Hollywood sometimes calls these individuals line producers, these are basically investors who will back your film. If you can get someone to like what you do well enough to back it for like $10,000, then you may have enough volunteer work and inspiration in your team to go ahead and be able to make that film for under 10, thus honoring your investment and being able to do it. If you come right out of the gate saying, I need this named actor, I need this, and this, then you might need $100,000, and you might need to use that named actor to publicize your movie and try to raise money, and typically that will take much longer. So the goal of how soon you want to make your film must be considered, and that's totally up to the individual filmmaker. Personally, I've found that most films that I have made with Burning Bulb Publishing, I've had to self-fund at least part of them. So I'm just saying that up front. If I want the movie made right away, I do have to self-fund it. So that's something to know. If you have the time to waste, and I don't want to use waste being nonchalant, but if you do have time, then you may be able to fundraise. There are 3 things needed to make a film, and this goes for any film, be it a Hollywood one or an indie film. You need time, talent, and treasure. So if you have the time, you can get by without the treasure because you have the time to fundraise. If you have the talent and time, even better. But if you have the treasure and time, then you might be able to overshoot it if you don't have the talent. You need at least 2 of these things, but without at least 2, it won't happen. If you have all 3, you will have a successful movie.
I got a good bit of equipment. I got a good many props. But if I need something, somebody I know is going to have it. And you start developing connections within the film community, so someone's going to have something that can help you out.
Equipment and props. So when I first showed up on set, Brad had his equipment, such as his camera and those items as well too. Often Brad and Fuzzy Monkey Films were using the availability of a lot of the items, say for instance like lighting, of people that had already had that. We had a few people that had sets of lights, whether they were using them for photography, their own filmmaking, and often these were people that were involved in the movie that was being made, and they would be able to bring their items on set. So early on, I had a good understanding of what was needed to make a movie, or some of the important things. Now, of course, I did things like hop on YouTube and just, type in, hey, what do you need? What are the necessities when making a film, particularly like your independent, your low budget, where you don't have a lot of money. Amazon, of course, is a huge help on this. You also have companies or product brands like Newer, which definitely help someone that is getting started in filmmaking. I highly suggest just picking up some of those cheaper items. Get them very, very cheap. Try them out, use them, see what you like, see what you don't like, and then go out and get the more expensive item that really pinpoints on those particular things that you liked most about what that particular item had. So early on, I did not have a camera. I just showed up on set and was doing things like effects work. No, I did have makeup at the time because prior to being involved with low-budget film, I had a lot of makeup. It's something that I did throughout the year. This wasn't just Halloween time that I like to mess around with makeup and effects, particularly like cuts and stabs and blood and those kind of effects. So I already had makeup in my toolkit, but I really didn't have anything else. So one of the first things that I did is I actually used to have a boat, a very large boat that I enjoyed, but I got to thinking, you know what? I can't enjoy this thing year round, so I'm going to sell my boat. And I got a pretty penny for it, enough to go out and get myself a camera. The camera that was being used by Brad on Fuzzy Monkey Films set is the Canon 80D, which is very, very user-friendly. It's a camera that is often used by filmmakers. DSLR, it is, when I bought it, was around $1,500. You could probably get the camera body for about $1,200, but I got it with a couple lenses. And so that way we can run 2 cameras at one time. It just seemed ideal. Often with one camera, of course, you're going to get multiple angles. You're going to get your wide angle. You're going to get both your over the shoulders. And then, of course, you're going to get some filler shots, some B-roll, that kind of stuff. And to have a second camera on set, I thought that would be something that would definitely cut down on the amount of time that we were spending. And we can get those multiple angles in a single shot as opposed to having to do take after take after take. With filmmaking today, one of the added benefits that there is having digital. We don't have to worry about cutting short ends off and 35 millimeter, 8 millimeter film, purchasing that and then trying to get your shot and then realizing later on that it's not good. With having things like DSLRs and low budget filmmaking, I think it's definitely improved because you could get as many shots are needed or necessary, and then choose later on in the editing process to see which ones came out best. You can try many different things, which is something that was not as available, say, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and even into the early 2000s. So after getting my camera, I realized some of the things that were very important in filmmaking that I think are often overlooked, because it's something that you don't see in front of the camera lens, but it's something that's definitely used behind it, is lighting. So I had gotten a few lights myself, something similar to like what this is right here, just some little LEDs, smaller panel lighting. These things were great. The batteries would last, smaller battery would last about 2 hours. And again, you grow as a filmmaker. So as I'm using these lights, I'm realizing the smaller batteries aren't quite lasting as long as we need. So I need to get a whole bunch of batteries. So eventually I'd gotten a whole bunch of the smaller batteries. And then I realized, well, it just seems counterproductive to get smaller batteries. So I started getting very much larger batteries. Investing, everything that I buy, everything that I get for equipment-wise, for low budget, for the indie films that we're making is an investment. I'm looking at it, I am researching it, I'm checking buyer reviews to see what works best, what makes it work best. So I tried to increase the availability for what we had for lighting to make it a lot better for our final product, because lighting is something that's very much needed, and if used correctly, these are another thing. I would just go on YouTube and I would start looking like how to use lighting correctly for filmmaking. After that, I paid attention to sound, and I realized sound was very important. It's something that can make the difference. It can make and break a film as well too. Not particularly the sound score or the music that's brought into a film, because that's of course definitely important, but just the sound being consistent, whether it be the actors' voices being picked up, ambient sound of things like traffic. Some funny stories that we have. Anyone that's ever worked on low-budget films realizes that as soon as you call action, that's when the cars and the airplanes start making noise, and birds, and whatever could possibly make noise is made as soon as action is called. So, but sound was something that was very important, so I started working on getting better equipment for sound-wise. I'd worked on getting some like XLR microphones, some shotgun microphones, tried a few things out. Microphones, they can be a little pricey, but with this day and age, microphones are actually super affordable. You can get something that's comparable that's you may have only spent, say, $30 or $40 for, that there is another item out there, say $200 or $300 for, and they're very comparable. So currently I use Deity microphones, shotgun microphones, and I think they have a nice, crisp, beautiful sound. It picks up the vocals very well, and it's something that I grew into using. So along with those items, so the camera, I picked up a bunch of different lenses along the way too, because the glass that you're using on the camera is very important as well too. The lighting, the sound, started to work on perfecting that. I started looking into things like gimbals, because I wanted a smooth shot during motion. I thought that was important. I liked that you could follow someone and the shot was very smooth, and I wanted to see how people were doing this. So I started looking into gimbals. I did get one, and it is something that does work quite well. I do not have a Steadicam, although what I understand is a lot of people are moving away from gimbals and starting to use more of Steadicams, which is interesting because the technology-wise, of course, something like a gimbal technology it's much more progressed than something like a Steadicam, but I find that more and more filmmakers, even very large budgeted filmmakers, are big fans of actually using a Steadicam. I looked into cranes and jibs because I was thinking like we need those shots, those opening shots, those establishing shots for getting a wider range of say for instance starting up high, coming down low, or the opposite, and getting those shots as if why could a multi-million-dollar production company, they of course rent out a crane, something like that, but why can't we do that as low-budget indie filmmakers? So I started looking into cranes and jibs. And what I started to find is that a lot of people were actually starting to shy away from that and started getting into drones. So I started looking into drones, and I'm thinking, wow, this is fascinating. I can't believe this is something that I could actually do. So I purchased a drone. I began to start using it, fiddling around with it, increasing my ability to use the drone is not the easiest thing to do, but I think over time you could definitely get better at perfecting that as a craft. I realized that when it comes to using drones, it is the FCC is not a huge fan of people making money off of footage that's used from a drone. So I had looked into and I began studying to get my Part 107 license so that I could operate just simple drone and begin to get footage that I believe really makes a difference in filmmaking. It's interesting when you see it in anything from commercials, many commercials that you'll see, especially in things like real estate, you'll see drone work. I mean, I recognize it as drone work now, but prior to getting into this craft, I had never realized it was used as often as it was. Larger budgeted productions are really getting into really shying away from things like helicopters and cranes and jibs and stuff because they can get even better quality and make it more smooth getting these drone shots for film. And of course it's something that we can do in micro budget filmmaking, is we can actually do something like use a drone. So in order to make sure that no one was getting fined, because the possibility does exist when it comes to the FCC, I'd made sure I got my Part 107 license and began doing drone work. And getting to see the films that have already been put out and films that are about to be put out that I've done drone work for, I find it quite fascinating. It's actually... when you get to see your final product being implemented or being put into a film and noticing the differences that it makes, it's heartwarming. It feels really good, and that's something that I very much enjoyed getting into, is doing the drone work. I have never worked on a set where equipment was rented, or at least that I know that had been rented, but I do understand that it is something that is done quite often. I don't think we could afford something like going out and purchasing a Red or a Arri Alexa, something along those lines, but it's definitely something in the future that we could look into. But I come to find that things like even your DSLRs, even filmmakers that have begun to go into using like 4K, even some shoot into like 8K now, I'm finding a lot of filmmakers are actually coming back to doing 1080p, which I find fascinating. So you don't have to shoot in 4K. This is something to consider when making a low budget or a micro budget film, is the quality that I'm going to put out. And what I would say is some of my favorite movies that I've actually seen over the last couple of years, I'm pretty sure they're not even 1080p. These are things that are shot on camcorders. But yet the films, there's something, again, very magical about watching them, something that I very much enjoy.
As far as equipment, props, etc., I have some stuff, but I also have some friends that, have props or lights or cameras. And that's the nice thing about indie filmmaking. If you have friends, you can all get together and utilize stuff. Because that stuff's expensive. I mean, especially the camera and the lights. And some of the props are damn expensive too. So it's good to kind of get together and come together on bringing your own stuff if you can. I've never had to rent anything, but I've heard it's kind of a way to go if you don't have some stuff. It's less expensive. So as far as that, I mean, I have props, I have cameras, but it's always good to have extra stuff. So
As of right now, I've either been, when it came to special effects, creating my own budget-friendly prosthetics. When it comes to equipment, as of right now, anything that has been filmed has been on a phone and or has been borrowed. I would say at least if you can have the equipment to collect good audio, that's always a plus. And editing software is also a plus. If you have at least, you can collect the right audio that you need and be able to edit whatever, whatever recordings that you have. Most of the equipment that I've gotten to use, it was always a learning experience. So I am not an expert in running a camera or audio, but if you show me how to use it, then I just roll with it. I would definitely like to learn more. Most situations, the props and prosthetics would be homemade, and depending on the type of team I have, they may be able to create the props and prosthetics themselves.
Now, a lot of people ask me what kind of filming equipment that I use, how much money do I spend in the props, and how much do I spend in catering, as well as when I do casting, do I audition or do I just cast my friends, things like that. So I think, let me break it down in the simplest terms. I don't want to sound like a lawyer, but the real answer is it depends. Personally, for equipment, I used to own a set of DSLR cameras, which is what we shot Desk Clerk on. But I upgraded from that. In the film Godsend, we shot that with Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6Ks on the 4K setting. I think that at that point is where an independent filmmaker should focus at, from that point or better. I'm not here to endorse a given brand like Blackmagic or Red or Aries or Sony's or any of these cameras that are out there, because ultimately, as long as you can get it to HD or higher and your cameraman or woman is good, you can still cinematically tell a film that looks well, and can be distributed. Now, regarding lighting, I do have some basic lighting that I own, but it always helps to hire a light crew or the folks that can support your film based on what you do. Oftentimes I will hire people if they have stronger equipment or stronger skill sets than I do, and I can afford them. I usually keep my budgets for that department to be about $1,000 for a week, meaning $200 a day for 5 days of very long days. So not a true 7-day week, but 5 very long day shoots. So that's what I budget, and sometimes you can't get cinematographers for that, but sometimes you can. So if I can get a cinematographer and a lighting person for $1,000, then that's what I try to budget for on my very low budget films. But in other movies, for example, John Light, we had about 200 people working on that film. There was a unit, a B unit, and I believe it had a $55,000 budget. Chick-fil-A was the catering company for that, and they donated chicken sandwiches and various things on certain days. But another piece of your film's budget will be catering. So again, how much do I spend on catering? That also depends. I would try to keep it between 100 and 200 a day, but depending on how many people you have on your set on any given day may dictate that price. Again, it depends. So it's a little bit of a loaded question based on your own specific needs. My advice to independent filmmakers is, if you can keep your cast small and keep your action down, you can keep the cost down. Now, one of the other pieces that inevitably gets asked is on special effects versus visual effects, and what do I spend on that? Do I bring my own? I do know several talented people, such as Darren Ricci and Carly Ricci, and also Fred Vogel and Jeremy Cruz with Toe Tag, there's different people that I work with for if it needs blood and guts, that's who I call. I don't try to do that myself. On the visual effects side, I know several great artists, both in the States and abroad. Like in the United States, I like Dorian Clevenger, and there's several others that I've worked with. And we'll try to do visual effects if we can at the best price possible. I tell people that if you don't know and you need something done visually and you don't really have a lot of money, to go onto Fiverr and see if there's some artists there, maybe in Bollywood, that will help you with something, maybe a blood splatter or a rotoscoping, and they'll give you a quote, and if it's within your means, then that may be a way to go. So in essence, you have a satellite unit that's helping you. And that's not unlike what Hollywood does in their grand scheme of things, which I'm sure you've seen in credits when they go through and they'll say special effects or visual effects artists, and they'll show maybe even 100 different people working on like one of these superhero movies or something like that. You don't need to have 100 people working on your independent film, but having access to different artists, because you never know when somebody's busy and you might need to call someone else. Just having that options built will help you save money and get the right person for your job.
Everything's volunteer. Everything's volunteer. Sometimes it's just me alone with the camera. Sometimes I could have a crew about up to like 6 people. Sometimes it's just me and a camera. I take whoever's willing to work. Whoever's willing to help. Whoever wants to be there. That's what I want. Whoever wants to be there, that's who I'll take. There's there's certain people that have certain looks and their acting style that fit better in the role. I'll use anyone that wants to be in a film, I'll put them in a film. But for certain roles, I select the right personality and the right look for a certain role.
Crew. So a lot of the sets that I've worked on, we tend to have a very small crew. Some of the primary elements when it comes to a crew, of course, we're going to have the camera operator. On some of the films that I've worked with, the camera operator is also the director as well, too. Not the DP, but I mean the actual director. On other sets that I've worked with, we've had a actual separate director and then a cinematographer or a DP, director of photography. So to have those 2 separate roles. Along with that, of course, you want to kind of get that microphone up real close to the actors, especially when you're using something like a shotgun microphone. So in order to do that, having a boom pole, getting that microphone as close as you can. What's interesting as a filmmaker prior to making films, I had never realized or considered something like a microphone or how close it would even need to be to the actor or actress. But after working on set, realizing that it doesn't ruin movies, but once you start to watch movies, you realize some of the secrets behind it. And one of which is how close a microphone is to the actor or actress without being in the footage. Making sure it's not dipping down, teabagging the actor or actress, but it's very important to get it close. So we would, on all the sets that we would have a boom operator, someone that is going to make sure that the boom is very, very close. In addition to that, now sometimes it would be the same person doing these multiple roles, for instance, like boom, but then lighting as well too. So lighting is something that is underutilized often, I think, but it's something that with someone that does very good lighting, it really does make a difference in the film, making sure that someone has a good understanding of the differences, the lighting, why we have the lights where we do, the different type of scene or shot, because there's many different stories being told, what the director wants, what the writer wants, what the cinematographer wants, and of course the lighting actually plays a very important role in that, because the person that's setting up or doing the lighting is potentially going to hurt this scene. That could happen with poor lighting. For instance, a character that's supposed to look menacing doesn't look scary at all, and it could be something as simple as the placement of lights. So having someone on set that is placing the lights in a particular area at the certain level, the brightness that they're going to have, the different types of colorating that they're using. I like a lot of like giallo horror that Italian look to it. Lighting was very, very important. You're going to see lots of like maroons, reds, blues, and that was something that I always found fascinating about giallo horror is the lighting and the importance that something like that can make in a film. And just like with the drone work that I spoke of earlier, lighting I think is something that it can also make or break a film, but it's something that's very important. So when it comes to micro and low budget filmmaking, often the people that are involved are going to pick up a lot of the cost. I have never worked with a director that didn't try to compensate for travel, or of course they're always buying meals, making sure that everyone on set is fed. That is something that's very, very important to make sure that you are feeding your cast and crew. It's not just something to make sure that they're getting food in them to help out on set, but it's a level of appreciation. So I think it's something very important when making a film to make sure that everyone is fed. All the sets that I've worked on, whether it be a producer or the director, whoever's in charge, they always are trying to make sure that people are at least getting compensated for travel. Me, I particularly do not. I turn it down, and the reason why is because I'm looking at these films as an investment, and I want to make sure that the film can be made to its highest potential. So when we look at something like, say, the director wants to get a particular actor or actress involved in the film and thinks that they might increase, say, for instance, getting a higher budget because it gets involvement from people through crowdfunding. If I look at it as if I'm taking pay, then that might take away from something like that. Or it could be something like a perk that is getting people that are interested in getting the film later on. Maybe it's something that in the editing process, they're able to add a particular element that costs some money, and I would like to see that money go to them. But there are always costs that are going to be when it comes to the cast and crew. Me particularly, I've never been involved on that end, but we do definitely in low budget and indie filmmakers make sure that you are putting out there that whether or not it is an acting, it's a paying role or non-paying role. That's something to be very, very specific about. But again, even if it's a non-paying role, make sure that your actors, actresses, and your crew are being fed. It's something that shows the appreciation from the production company and from the director. There is, in low budget indie filmmaking, there's a lot of appreciation that goes on. We realize the hard work and dedication that everyone's putting forth to make sure that these projects get done. It's a painter makes a painting, someone that's creating a song, putting music out there. There's always going to be other people involved in these projects. It's usually not just one person, although in the end, you see the director's name on there and they'll say, excellent job. But every director that I've ever worked with, they make sure they want to put it out there to let everyone know it's a collaborative effort, that there are many, many people involved. And it's very important to make sure that acknowledgement is there. And one of those things to do to acknowledge is at least try to compensate people for travel when possible. And then, of course, again, feed them, put some food in their belly.
When it comes to crew, actors, crew, whatever, I've always been used to everyone kind of not being a jack of all trades, but a lot of times your crew is going to be the actors as well in a micro budget or no budget film, especially because you don't have the money, you don't have the funds to really pay for a professional to come in and do this and that. So it's always good to have friends that are willing to do multiple things on the movie. If I'm directing a movie, I usually play a small role in the film. In a lot of my older movies, I would play a small role and die off or be killed off early in the film so I could end up directing and filming it myself the rest of it and not have to worry about acting as well. But it's always good to have somebody, that's willing to run the camera, willing to hold the lights or the mic, willing to act as well. That's the best case scenario if you have that. As far as paying somebody, I've never had to pay anybody for anything. I think if you're in a micro budget film, my opinion is maybe you should just be willing to get the experience and do it for passion's sake instead of expecting money. Once you learn the ropes a little bit more, get some experience, then you go help somebody and maybe ask for some money for expenses or driving and stuff. But as far as in my opinion, experience is the biggest thing. That's the most important thing, and it's good to have people that are willing to do it and just do it for fun, do it for free.
I don't have a crew right now. So if if I were to start filming one of the scripts that we've been working on, I would like to have a crew consisting of at least 5 members, and that would be DP and PA, assistant director, makeup artist, special effects, and in an ideal world, I would love to pay everybody, because we all put work into it, and it's, at the end of the day, it feels like a job. It's a job. It's you're working hard, you're working countless hours to create something, so why not be compensated for it?
When it comes to casting, like I said before, it's kind of at least in my experience, it's just been a bunch of friends, or a smaller crew and cast. So you kind of just deal with what you got and who you got, and you go from there. I mean, sure, if you have a character that's supposed to be this beautiful girl, who's the sex appeal of the film, then you gotta try to get that kind of person. But or somebody who's the killer, you want some big hulking guy, then you got to get that kind of person. But other than that, I've never been part of a table read or getting together with the cast and crew. You kind of just maybe hand out some ideas and say, hey, this is what you're going to be doing in front of the camera. This is the type of person you're going to be, in the film. Any warning? I would say, I mean, one of the most important things, especially if it's if you have a female role who would say has to get naked or do some sort of a sex scene or something, then you have to let them know, hey, this is what your character's going to do. Are you okay with that? Are you comfortable with that? And obviously, if that's a no, then that's fine, and you don't have to do it. But that, to me, that's the main warning. For a character, are you willing to do this? Are you willing to be killed like this? Are you willing to get blood all over you? This and that. So I mean, that's pretty much that.
I haven't had a cast yet, but if I did, I would have NDAs filled out and contracts, so then it states, if they're being compensated, what they'd be compensated for, what is expected of them, what they should be expecting from me and the crew. I feel like having things written down saves a lot of headache. I would prefer to start with video auditions and then do casting calls in person to get to know the person a little bit more. And absolutely schedule table reads, whether it be virtual or in person. The more that the cast is familiar with the script as a whole team, the better the outcome is going to be at the end of the day. I consider, am I going to be able to dedicate the right amount of time into the role? I don't want to, be accepted in something and then only be available for a couple of the days that are requested for filming. That's just insane. Also, I like to be able to put myself personally into that character. Like, do I relate to them in any way? That's kind of another way I like to take on roles as well.
On certain films, early on, I used actors that were colleagues of mine that worked on similar films. For example, with horror movies, doing things with Fuzzy Monkey and Brad Twigg, we had several friends from that genre who came through and worked on other projects. When I'm doing my faith-based films, we met a lot of different actors from those that will also like to work on other feature films. There is this thought that you could have film or location burnout if you reuse the same actors over and over and over again. My goal is to try to utilize our team to the farthest extent possible, but make sure that each movie has fresh folks in it as well. So that keeps the variety up while still being able to work with people you know are good. So usually folks that appear back to back in my movies are folks that I know are consistently good and can deliver a performance. There are some movies that do require auditions, and I highly encourage them. For example, your lead should always be auditioned. In Midnight, we had several people that sent in video auditions for, and although we only selected one specific main character for the role of Nancy, we actually used several of the folks that auditioned for Nancy in a variety of roles in Midnight because their auditions were so powerful. So I recommend doing them if you can, so that you might find serendipitously other actors for different roles just from your one audition, even if the audition is for one specific character. Do that when possible. Regarding table reads, if you have the luxury of the time to do it, I would recommend it, because just hearing people say those words can give you an idea whether or not the words you have written make sense when they are spoken. A lot of us writers get it in our head because we're writing something down that it seems great on paper, but when you hear people over and over struggling to say those phrases, or they say, hey, could I say it this way, you realize that maybe you should change it. So doing the table read allows some of that to be vetted, and it's better to vet it beforehand than being on camera during the time of taping and wasting critical moments during your production.
The best thing you could do for a low-budget film is have the most exotic and attractive location as you can, which makes your budget look bigger than you actually have. That's the best thing. And as far as actually having permission to shoot in certain locations, sometimes I'll actually get permission. Like shooting in a bar, I'll get permission. Sometimes though, you do guerrilla filmmaking. You do a little bit of both. Sometimes I'll get permission. Sometimes I'll do a little guerrilla filmmaking. A little bit of both.
We discovered there was a stretch of the turnpike tunnels that was abandoned, that got abandoned in the 60s. Three tunnels were abandoned. The Ray Hills Tunnel, I think it was the Laurel Tunnel, and the Sideling Hill Tunnel. And we went out and visited these tunnels, and I can just remember as soon as I got there and saw the tunnels that I was just totally blown away, and I was like, I have to make a film here. It was like calling to me. It was just really weird. It was like a revelation.
Locations. That's kind of a funny one. I joke around with a friend about that. We've never, when it comes to getting permission, I don't think we've ever had to go ask for permission. We've pretty much done guerrilla filmmaking every film that I've done, at least my films. You kind of sneak on to something. No, granted, we've never broken into a place or nothing like that, breaking the law. But we've probably done some trespassing in the past, I'm sure. The hardest location that we shot at was definitely the abandoned turnpike tunnels in Breezewood, Pennsylvania. Those were tough. I mean, it was such a cool spot to film. I filmed 2 or 3 films there, but especially the Sideling Hill movie, Nathan Hines movie. That was quite the shoot. That was quite the experience. Some really grueling long hours at that place. We got chased out of there once by somebody. Other than that, though, I've never had any issues with locations. We filmed on the streets before. I filmed, hanging out of cars while it's moving. I mean, all kinds of stuff. We've done mostly guerrilla stuff, which, in my opinion, is the most fun. Okay. I'll also add that I like to film on location of a place, especially a kind of an outside area or a cool spot like the tunnels. I'm not really much for being lazy. There's some filmmakers that are fucking lazy, and the majority of their films are shot in a damn bathtub or bathroom or shower area at someone's house because they're too fucking lazy to go out to a location and shoot. I'll just add that.
I think when it comes to location, it's so easy to do a lot of shooting outdoors. I feel like that's something that can be done pretty discreetly. Anything indoors wise, I mean, it's contacting the owner of the property, and do they want compensated for it? Is that something that you're able to budget? I know some locations for filming has, looked into like Airbnbs, because they can rent them for a certain amount of time, as long as, the crew is taking care of the property and the sets and not damaging anything. It's all good.
Most everybody does experience guerrilla filmmaking as their foray. I mean, most folks find it easier just to shoot something and not ask for permission. But it is becoming more and more harder to get quality locations without going through the appropriate channels. The hardest things that I've found is stores that have brands with them, like a Home Depot or an Ace Hardware or a gas station with a big name on it. A lot of times you do have to go through a lot of red tape. If you do need a location, do what you can to get permission. And if you cannot get permission, consider how would you do it guerrilla style, maybe a different location that's not as restrictive. But if they have told you no, consider not doing it so you don't get in trouble.
No, because if they try to sue me, they're not going to get anything. I mean, there's a saying, you can't get blood from a stone. If you sue me, you can't get nothing from me.
I've never had anybody fill out a release form. It's all, like I said, we've always filmed for fun. That's what matters. If they're willing to get bloody, naked, whatever, that's fine. If they're not, that's fine. Don't be in it. But yeah, no need for release forms for me. My role has been so many different things. I've probably done everything that you could do on it. That's just part of filmmaking, indie filmmaking at least. I usually like to be director when I can be, especially if it's my idea. That way I can just kind of lay out all my ideas and do it. And I also usually run the camera as well for my own films, minus the times that I'm on camera, in front of the camera for a small role or something. As far as Friends movies, I've done all kinds of stuff. I've had some little bit parts, roles. When I work with Nathan Hine, Darren Ricci, those guys, I've helped with hold props. I've helped do special effects. I mostly run the camera. I'm usually the primary director of photography or cinematographer. So that's mainly my role when I'm not making my own film, is cameraman. I've done a little bit of everything, I guess, pretty much. Never really done makeup. That's one thing I've never done is makeup. Especially if it's for my own movie. I like to direct and I like to run the camera. That way I can just make sure I get that vision on camera that I have myself. I mean, like I said, I usually only have somebody else run the camera for my own movies if I'm acting, and I can't run the camera at the same time as I'm acting, so. No dedicated sound man, really. Just whoever's there to help. Whoever's willing to help with sound, with lighting, all that stuff. No dedicated, really, anything, to be honest.
So, as of recently, I have been assistant director on a set, and, the responsibilities there were making sure that the cast was where they needed to be for their scenes, making sure that, we try to stay on a timeline as much as possible, even helping with slate and making suggestions and helping editing scripts as needed, because, changes happen. I think I would prefer for my first film to have a smaller crew. I feel like, dedicated lighting person, that can just be teamwork between the DP and the director or the assistant director, or it could be a collaboration of who's doing the boom, so it would be boom and lighting. But basically, I can see my first production being a micro budget, so it's one person may be doing 2 jobs.
Well, I need to specify that as of this interview, I've worked on over 100 feature films and television series. So, for example, in Black Panther, I was an actor, so I was in a scene at the United Nations, which is a little piece in the credits. So that was an all-day shoot, but I was only an actor. In the movie Desk Clerk, I was both the director and I was an A unit cameraman, and my colleague Rich Bottles was the B unit, so we ran 2 different cameras and had 2 different people. In the movie Midnight, I was the director, and we had between 4 and 5 different camera people at different times. So I do run the camera on a lot of films, especially a lot of Jason Campbell films. We are very limited resources. Like there was a movie called Coronavirus, Perfect Storm, and Coronavirus Patient Zero. Both of those little films, I ran 3 cameras by myself and co-directed with Jason. So that was a role where I was even setting up lights and doing everything, almost all the roles. But I do know that you will have a better quality film if you can direct as one role and let a gifted cinematographer do the other role of handling the camera. If you need to do both, then that's fine because you're watching the video screen. But as a director, it's sometimes better to be having that connection with the actors and focus on their performance and watching their performance in a video monitor while the gifted DP or cinematographer is capturing the footage. That way you can see everything going on and not worried about the mechanics of the camera. Yes, I've done them all. I've played multiple roles on films, but if you can separate them, you will be better off.
I wouldn't say we had any horror stories. Really, I mean, there's been some really long, tough shoots that we've done. But in the end, it's always, it's worth it because you get to make this cool film. I would say the worst thing that happened was early 2000s. We were filming a short. And I think it was for a little film short that we did called Horror Party. And I was actually going to be the killer. And it was the first, and I think the last time I was the killer in one of my films. And I was up in a tree, and I was supposed to jump out of a tree to attack whoever. And when I jumped, I ended up getting my ankle caught in between two branches. And I snapped my ankle. And so that hurt like hell, obviously. Fell on the ground. But we kept filming. I actually ran in the film. I actually sprint after the 2 characters right after I snapped my ankle. I guess it was adrenaline. I don't know, but that's probably the worst thing that's happened on a set, to me personally, at least.
On-set horror stories. So, I don't know if I can share this one or not, though. Well, that's the thing, because I was thinking of when we literally did a whole day's worth of filming, come to realize that none of the audio was recorded. So we had to reschedule and do it all over again. But that second time around, the other actresses and I, we knew our lines down pat, and we got it done. Other horror, oh my goodness. That's tough. The biggest thing is, I think and it's not one specific instance, but on multiple sets, coming across this is your time frame, and you could schedule things, however, depending on obstacles that get in the way, you're looking at anywhere was supposed to start as an 8-hour day ends up being a 24-hour day. So time can be its own horror. Somebody just needs to make a movie about time and being on schedule, and it never happens.
You should always expect the unexpected, and always expect that Murphy's Law will show up in full force. When you think it's going to be a sunny day, know that it might rain. I would say that if you are part of the person planning the film, to go ahead and lay out days that will pair up well between rain and shine, for example, so that you can swap days if you need to. And that the characters, if you bring someone in from out of state, try to pair them in a way that they're not spread out too many split days apart, so that when the weird stuff happens, you can roll with it. We have had situations where cameras have broken down on set, and we've had to find new equipment and actually buy a camera in the middle of the production. There's been times when pieces of rental equipment hasn't shown up on time, and we're now out. One of the biggest worries that I had was I went and did a film in Canada, and I had to fly first to Edmonton, Alberta, and then drive 6 hours up to British Columbia. When I landed in Edmonton, TSA took the master battery component for my camera that was needed for the whole shoot. It was a specific battery, and the Blackmagic cameras used all that battery, and anything smaller will not work. And being that far out in the boonies, after leaving Edmonton, I knew I wouldn't have access to any of that, and I didn't have any way to get one. The way we accommodated was we stayed in Alberta and looked for a camera shop, and we found a smaller version of the bigger battery that I had, and that's what we had to make do for the entire 2-week film shoot in Canada. So you always expect the unexpected, and make sure that if you are traveling, have extra money that you are going to be okay spending, because you may find yourself needing to buy something expensive because there's no other choice besides shutting down the production.
It was a total nightmare because we didn't know the access points to the tunnels at that time, and we walked like 2 miles with all this gear down this abandoned turnpike road, and it was just grueling. And then when we got there, we had to deal with people coming because it's a bike track now. People ride their bikes on it. So we had all these issues with people. I was trying to shoot this content that was kind of extreme, and it was just a total nightmare. And at the end of the day, I was trying to do effects and stuff, and I just got really frustrated because I never did a film before, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So we left, and we went and got dinner, and then after dinner, Dan comes to me and says, "I lost the camera." And I mean, what do you mean you lost the camera? He's like, "I lost the camera." And I was like, "What the fuck is it?" He's like, I don't know. I think it might be back at the tunnel." And I'm like, "Oh my God." So we knew there was a road that went under an underpass that was close to the tunnel we went to, and there was no pull off, so we basically had pulled off on the road and put our 4-ways on. Luckily, it was a very well-traveled road. And we went out there, and Dan and Tiffany volunteered to go because me and Mike were older, and we didn't feel like running through a pitch black tunnel. And they ran through the tunnel and got the camera, and Dan's flashlight failed in the tunnel. So if he would have went by himself, he would have been in that pitch black tunnel all by himself. I don't know how. It's like almost like a mile long too. I don't know how he would have did it.
Can't say I've ever been stressed out. You just learn to adapt to any type of situation. A good example is the film I was doing, the boat trip. This is one of the times I actually had a storyline written out. I actually had dialogue. I had a whole plot. And when I actually got to the set, the one actress, she was really sick. So everything I had planned, I actually had planned out that the killer, Ray, who was playing a killer, he was actually going to kidnap the girl, bring her into the house, tie her all up. Here the girl was really sick. She couldn't do anything. She was barely able to stand. So I had to throw everything out the window, change everything. So what I did is I adapted. I actually had her become sick in the film, where we can just actually get her and have her just laid on and be incapacitated through a good bit of the film. So, I mean, you learn how to do that type of thing. You actually have to adapt, and we made her actually sick in the film where she could actually lay it on. Actually, it worked out. The film's actually going to be playing at a festival this Friday in Pittsburgh, and then it's actually going to be shown at a festival in New York, I believe in either June or July. I'm not sure which, but anyway, it's playing there.
So, am I able to think on my feet when things go a little crazy? When it comes to working on set, a lot of things happen. A lot of crazy things happen. Especially when doing effects, things do not tend to go your way when you would like them to go your way. Usually prior to actually doing the shot, you might do some kind of test, like a blood pump purge, and like, well, okay, so it worked great with water. Let's go ahead and feed that tube, put some blood in there, and then they call action. You do the shot, and it just does not work out the way that it did in testing. Sometimes that's okay because you can always reset, do it again, and other times, depending on what you're doing, blood is very, very messy. So when it comes to those horror films and anyone that's ever worked with blood, once it's there, we don't exactly have the budget to have 20 of the exact same t-shirt. We may only have 2, if that. So once you start getting blood on everything, it's like, well, what can you do now? So I think this is kind of funny, but the idea of like, just add more blood. So working on low budget indie films in the horror side of things, I think one of the ideals is just add more blood. So if you want to cover something up, just add more blood. But it is good to make sure that you are thinking on your feet, that you're thinking, okay, what could I possibly do to make this shot different? You are very inept to thinking along the lines of like, okay, well, what am I going to do to prop this particular item off? Well, I could use that tree branch. Or what is a way that I can get the light from the sun to reflect off of this one particular item? Oh, I can use, that white reflective surface of a car hood that's sitting over in the corner or something like that. So you tend to pick up these concepts or ideas that in theory will work, but it's using what you have around you to make sure that you can get whatever the shot calls for. Make sure that it happens in the end. I think some of the things that you can't plan for, or at least you could try to plan for, that it tends to not go that well, is things like weather. Something that tends to put a damper on low-budget indie filmmaking, micro-budget films is weather. We often all have our 9-to-5s, our jobs that we have, and a lot of us are making these films on the weekends. We're weekend warriors. We're trying to get them done on the Friday evenings, Saturday, and Sundays. And very long shoot hours. Sometimes they could be 16, 18, 20 hours to try to get as much done, packed and filled in as we can, because you may only have a limited amount of weekends, especially when you're shooting in particular months of the year. So for instance, like October, the end of October, and you want to get a shot that calls for the leaves outside to be a particular color. Well, you may only have 1 or 2 or 3 weekends to do that in, at most, if that. And if rain starts happening during those weekends, and sometimes you even have to wait to the following year to get stuff done. There's multiple projects that I've worked on where we were unable to get the shots that we needed and had to actually wait 5-6 months before we could actually continue to resume filmmaking to get the shots that we need, because it's either too cold, too windy, snow's already started falling, and it's supposed to be summer months. One of the great things about filmmaking, and especially lower budget filmmaking, is a lot of real fun is, say you're shooting something in the summer, you can't get all the shots done, and you end up shooting into November, but of course the characters, it's supposed to be summer months. So prior to calling action, they're wearing a t-shirt, and over top have a jacket. Take the jacket off, put it off to the side, or someone holds it for them. You call action, they're playing off as if it's summer, nice, warm, 90-some degree weather temperature, and they go through the scene, cuts called, and then immediately jackets hand back to them, and it's covered back on, and it is freezing cold. So it's kind of funny. When you go to watch the movies, I am a bit of a whore for behind the scenes type stuff, and I'll see that often in movies and low budget films. If you ever get the opportunity to watch some of those behind the scenes, watch them, because you'll see some funny stuff, and one of which is you'll see that the cold weather, how often these films are made in cold weather. Earlier I had said something about the movie Frankenhooker. Even Children of the Corn, the original Children of the Corn, had scenes where it was nighttime out. The opening scene or the beginning scene in Children of the Corn, when they're in the hotel room and it looks like the sun's coming into the window, that was actually shot in the middle of the night. With Frankenhooker, the party scene where the mutilation it happens, that was also actually shot at night in the pitch dark. They just used lighting, and it was actually raining at the time too as well. But you can't tell when you go back and watch the film. As a lower budget film, when you go back and watch it, you don't realize that it was actually shot in the night, because it looks like daytime, it looks like a party, it looks like warmer weather, but it's not. And those are the kind of things that we have to work at, to try to adjust and work around as well too. And with us having our 9-to-5s, you'll have actors and actresses that can't make it to set because of the weather. They may be traveling 3 or 4 hours away, and since we live in an area where it's quite hilly, we do have some mountains around. We have lower level lands, we have flatter lands. The terrain around here, it very much differs. A half hour up the road, an hour up the road. So when you have someone coming from an area where it's very mountainous and snow falls, we may only get wet here, but of course, what can you do? That's one of the hardships of lower budget, indie, micro budget filmmaking.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely get stressed, especially like the day, night before. Just worrying about, if you're outside, is the weather going to be okay? Worrying are people going to show up? Because we've had some instances where people don't show up or they're really late. And, it just puts a damper on things, especially when you have a long day, especially when it's a long day of shooting effects. The effect shots can go wrong so easily, and it might take hours to do, just a small death scene or something with some effects. And, so it's nice to have things in order and have people helping out so you're not as stressed about it. But yeah, absolutely. You worry about trying to be as as good as you can. I mean, when you're making a movie, so there's absolutely some stress involved. But you have to have fun. That's the main thing. Is fun.
Of course, there's always going to be stressful situations that you encounter, regardless of how prepared you are for filming. Anything from cast member getting sick and can't show up, or a prosthetic not applying the way you want it to, or a special effect that was a flop and you have to redo everything all over again. There's always going to be stressful times during filming, whether you like it or not. You definitely, depending on the situation, you have to be quick on your feet to adjust and adapt to the situation. So if a special effect doesn't work, and if it doesn't work the first time, is there something different you can do for the next one? But again, considering timing, you just have to roll with it.
As far as sharp weapons go, we use fake instruments. So there's no one can get hurt. Fake knives, fake pitchfork, all that's fake. As far as using real guns, we make sure we deliberately check everything to make sure nothing's loaded. There's no bullets or anything in anything.
So safety measures. I'm not going to talk too much on safety measures. It's something that of course, we try to be as safe as possible as we can be on set. When it comes to special effects, some of the safety measures that we take in place are make sure that we are not having something like a blood tube pointed directly at someone's eyes or face. If that's what the shot calls for, of course, we're going to make sure that nothing is pointed at their face prior to calling action. Make sure that we get the eyes closed. Whatever safety measures that we can to keep everyone, not even just the actors and actresses, but of course who's on set. It could be animals as well too, but protecting the cameras. So safety for the cameras. There's been multiple times where The cameras had been doused in blood. That's no fun cleaning that out because the cameras are not cheap. And as low budget filmmakers, we don't exactly have the money to just go out and buy another camera. So, of course, we want to make sure that we're protecting the cameras as well, too. It's not uncommon to come home and, bring all the equipment into the house and realize that the light stands, the lights, even the microphone has blood all over it from shooting that day. So it's kind of funny. A lot of the blood that we use actually it stays kind of wet. When you're making blood, one of the things that we often do, we could try to buy stage blood, but it gets quite expensive. So making blood out of things like Kira syrup or your regular old syrup that you would put on like pancakes or waffles, and adding some coloration to it. So it tends to stay wet for a period of time. So maybe a couple weeks go by and you go back on the set and you pull your light stands out and realize like there's still blood on them that's still quite wet, and you get it all over your hands. So that's always a lot of fun. But when it comes to safety, one of the things that I found fascinating was working on the movie Wrestle Massacre. It was quite enjoyable. The actors, a lot of the actors that we were working with on set were former or even current wrestlers, as in like WWE type wrestling. And they have over 20 years of experience per each one of these wrestlers as well, too. So the choreography that goes along with that, there's a lot of safety measures that go in that. So it was interesting to be on set with someone that is, say, for instance, over 200 pounds with someone that's, 250, 280 pounds. And to see them pick that person up and body slam them, and to do it in a manner that is actually safe. The main character, Ricci, the actor, Ricci, he is a wrestler and been wrestling for, I believe, over 30 years. He was the choreographer on set as well, too. And to watch him go through the safety measures as him and the other actors that he was working with to make sure that when they did a particular move, that they were doing it in the safest manner to make sure that no one gets injured. As you get up there in age, too, getting injured is something that could definitely happen much, much easier. So there's a lot of consideration on that aspect of safety. One of the other things in safety as well, too, there has been multiple times on set that we've used firearms. These are blank firearms. They do not shoot actual projectiles as well, too, but there is a level of safety that needs to be met. You should treat every firearm as if it is an actual firearm. And at no point ever during set would we aim a gun at an actor or actress. One of the special things about movie magic, whether you're on a huge, gigantic budget or a low budget, is the ability to have a scene be put out and have someone watch that scene and not realize what is actually happening in reality. Because in reality, it may look, on scene, it may look like the gun is actually aimed at the person, that the gun is going to get fired and shot at the person as they, blood and a bullet enters in through their skull, side, shoulder, whatever it may be. But at no point in time was that gun ever actually aimed at the actor or actress, even though it looks very, very convincing that it was. So I find that kind of stuff fascinating as well, too. So you can still have a set that is very, very much safety driven to make sure that no one is getting injured at the time.
Safety is important. I wouldn't expect anybody to do something crazy. If I'm not going to do it myself, I wouldn't expect somebody else to do it. If they're willing to do something semi-dangerous, like a stunt, that's fine. It's up to them, but I'm not going to say, hey, you got to do this, or I'm not going to expect somebody to film in some horrible, dangerous condition. We've done some dangerous stuff, hanging out of windows of moving vehicles, riding on top of cars, filming while they're moving, all kinds of stuff. We've shot in some dangerous areas for sure, but I wouldn't expect anybody to be, do something crazy, I'll put it that way. When it comes to weapons on set, I've worked on quite a few films where we've had real firearms. Obviously, it's just common sense. You have to make sure, it's not loaded, I always check 3 or 4 times, even if that sounds like overkill. It's good to make sure you're safe with that, because when you're pointing a real gun at somebody, it's the real thing. It's no joke. You always feel nervous. You're stressed out about it. Even if you know it's unloaded, it's still stressful pointing a gun at somebody. As far as a knife, same thing. You got to be super, super careful with it. But yeah, it's just common sense when it comes to weapons. You just got to be careful.
Safety is a very big importance on any set, and that's just how it should be. Whether it be safety during, a stunt or climate situations, that the cast and crew should feel safe when they are on set, regardless of what's going on. On one of the sets, we did, because of COVID-19, doing routine temperature checks, routine symptom checks, practicing social distance when we can, providing masks, and when it came to performing stunts, we made sure that there were adequate padding, and the people performing stunts had practice before they were on film to make sure nobody got hurt. In most cases, the props that have been used are not real.
Well, I would like to reserve the answer to safety precautions, because each project has their own requirements of what they need. I will limit my answer to this, that firearms should have a marshal that looks and inspects the weaponry and keeps the weapons on them at all time, and at no time should live ammunition be on the set. Also, experienced special effects professionals should be used with fake weaponry to make the kills look as authentic as possible, but never should actual bladed weapons be placed on the actors themselves. If this can't be done, then the scene should be rethought out to see what could be done to make sure that safety is of absolute importance.
No, hell no, we can't even afford, no. I mean, we could barely afford fake blood, let alone anything like that.
You, as the actor, actress, you probably want to make sure that you have insurance, but it's something that on set, the director, the film company, the production company may and probably does not have for something like micro-budget filmmaking. So if you get injured and it's a trip to the hospital, it's going to be very difficult to make sure that you're getting taken care of to the best of your ability. So we need to make sure we're doing that prior to shooting action.
No, we've never been that official. We've never had any insurance or liability things. It's just we show up, make a movie, and have some fun. That's pretty much it.
In a perfect world, it would be ideal to have insurance and, liability forms filled out. But when it comes to micro budgeting, that might not always be the case.
I cannot comment on the insurance question, but I do believe that if you have the financial means to be insured, you should. But I also understand that a lot of independent films can't afford that. So you need to determine for yourself the level of risk you're willing to take.
Well, since I can't afford to pay anybody, I have to do it myself. I actually kind of like doing it myself, even though it is a cumbersome process. But editing's, that's another creative process. That's actually kind of where the film comes together and all that. That's actually, in many ways, how the film's actually created. No CGI, or extremely very little. Definitely no special effects CGI.
For my films, I've always edited it myself. I've never paid anybody. I've thought about it because it takes a lot of stress off of you as a director. But then again, I'm kind of, I don't know if you call me a control freak, but I like to edit my own stuff because it's my vision and I know what I want out of the edit. I know what I want out of the film. So more than likely, I usually always end up editing. But if I do something bigger, a long feature film or something, I might have somebody help me edit it because it does take a load off of you if you can have somebody help with it. Editing is not fun. I mean, it's good once you get some progress going with it and you get the editing process going and flowing. It's nice to see what you've done, what you've shot, but it's a pain. It's a pain in the ass.
No, I have not done any of my own editing yet. Depending on the situation, I would either try to conquer editing myself. If that didn't go well, then I would absolutely pay somebody to do it.
As I progress as a filmmaker, I kind of source things out. I still do edits because I think a filmmaker should edit their own film because it's their vision, and so I'll definitely always do that.
I try to use a professional paid editor whenever possible with oversight, meaning the editor will assemble the footage, I will watch the footage, provide notes, or be there in the editing session with him or her, and we do our best to go through in that model. The same thing like I mentioned earlier with hiring a cameraman who's good with a camera while I direct. I like having an editor who's already very slick with the software so that I can explain to them my vision and see it made. If I am editing, I am very, very, very slow. I'm a perfectionist and I have difficulty getting through the job in an efficient way. And I know that my time is also valuable and I can use my skill better by paying the editor and explaining what I want and seeing it played out as he's changing it versus me trying to do those steps. We have done those steps in our very first Burning Bulb movie, Desk Clerk, but we did find that as time went on, it was better to use a paid editor, and that all of our movies always has a line item budget for editing, no matter what.
I use a combination of the Adobe Pro and the Filmora editing process.
Programs I've used, I think it was Final Cut Pro in the past. I've used some professional ones like that. Premiere. I've used lesser ones. I think I used Coral Studio or something in the past. As far as CGI, really the only CGI that I've used in a film was green screen. I don't know if you consider that CGI, but digital effects, I guess. I've used green screen in a couple of different films, and those are always fun. It's always fun to do that.
Usually royalty-free music, but I'm going to be working with the composer David Rodella. So he's going to be working on the scores for my upcoming films, which is Touch Me Not, Lock Up Your Daughters, Legend of Polecat Hollow, and Pazzo, especially Pazzo. Pazzo and Lock Up Your Daughters are going to be the ones that he's actually going to be working on the score.
I've never purchased any music rights for any films. I've usually go and find something I like off of a royalty site and use that. You just got to be careful with what you do and how you do it so you don't get in trouble. As far as sound and stuff, to me, sound is one of the most painful things when it comes to filming. There's always an issue with a mic. There's always an issue with background noise. Just, if you're a filmmaker, you know what I'm talking about. There's always an issue, and when you go into the editing room, you have to mess with sound and sync things up, and especially if you're adding music or sound effects, it's a pain in the ass. But you just work with what you got, really. For future stuff, I hope I get somebody to score it. Like I said, I usually find something that I like online and utilize some of those songs. But at some point, I'm sure once I make a film and put some money into, maybe, I'll have somebody score it if I can.
Most likely royalty-free music because, again, we be broke most of the time.
Will England is a good friend of mine. He has done all my films, the sound effects, the sound, and he scored pretty much all my films. He scored all my films.
Yes, what I usually do is use a subscription service such as Storyblocks. There's several out there, and we try to use the collection of music they have. It's a very reasonable price. I think at the time of this taping, it's approximately $150 for a 1-year subscription. So that means if your production year occurs during that year, you can use from their song library. So that's a very good option. Usually if we do use custom music, it's not the entire film. It's usually one song where we'll hire a composer to score something. In our movie Godsend, we had a Nashville recording artist do the cover song that Richard Bottles wrote so we could have something to play in the credits. And we try to, in My Uncle John is a Zombie, Solon Sangaris scored over half of that soundtrack, so those were original songs. And so it depends on the type of movie we have and who we have access to at the time and what level that we can get at their songs. Some artists don't want you using their songs in a movie without exorbitant cost, but if an artist will let us use the song for exposure, we will try to go that route. But I will say that from an independent film perspective and a very low budget film, you may be better off just buying a licensing house subscription and choosing from their 100,000 plus songs to find the right ones to fit your movie, and then just move on with your project. If you have access to a composer and the money to pay a composer and the time to let them do the job, by all means do that original piece. And make sure you cover it with a physical license on paper, digital copy that you can submit to the distributor to let them know that you have the rights to use it. You can't go wrong there because you're getting exactly what you want, but a lot of independent films can't afford that, or it will take their project out very long from beyond when they want to get finished. I've known several projects that went a year later and still didn't have their original music done, and in that same time I had released 3 films. So that call is totally up to you.
Is one of my biggest pet peeves with independent, low budget, zero budget movies is that the sound quality friggin' sucks. The dialogue will be too low or too loud. The music will overpower the dialogue. The background noise will be either too quiet or too loud. The guy's delivering an important piece of dialogue. A bird is chirping so loud you can't hear what he's saying. I brought it up to Gary one day. He says, "Hey, you want to work on it?" He pulled up the movie. It took us 14 days. But we also had a couple of days off in between because Gary had to go away. It took us 14 days to get the sound done for this. And I don't know how many... I think I stopped counting at 14. I watched Faded Memories in all of its forms at least 14 times to check out the sound quality. And I think any of you guys who watch this movie, I say not only watch it, but listen. Listen to it. The dialogue, the background sounds, the music selection in it. I think it's one of the best indie sound design jobs. And not because Gary and I did it, but because Gary and I did it. No, because it sounds great. It sounds great. And that's one thing equally I'm looking forward to doing sound design again as much as I am looking forward to acting in a movie again.
The combination of DVD and streaming. I've only actually started doing that. And I will only do that if it's free. I'm not going to pay money for someone. I'm not going to pay to have my film shown.
We like our DVDs, we like our Blu-rays, but of course we like things like VHS as well too. We still purchase. And as low-budget indie filmmakers, we actually still put these the movies that we're making out on VHS from time to time. Sometimes as a perk on a crowdfunder, or just as something asking if people if they're interested in watching on VHS, which I still do. I still from time to time will watch movies on VHS because we love that physical media. With streaming, that kind of changed things. Much of when we're putting films out on physical media, people, we need the sales from that physical media because when it comes down to it, there are some costs that comes with micro budget or low budget filmmaking, and a lot of the money that's getting made back from selling the physical media is getting poured into the next project, and then of course whatever money's made from that gets poured into the next project. And when you have things out there like bootleg copies, that hurts the indie filmmaker. Now, move ahead to digital. When you have things like streaming platforms, you have people out there that will pirate the films that we make. and which is quite a shame. Growing up in the cassette era, you would take your cassette tape and stick it in the player, and you could hit record when a song comes on the radio, or you could take a friend's copy of a Journey album, toss it in the other side, and you can dub over onto a blank cassette tape. And I never thought that was a bad thing. I always thought, like, hey, this is pretty cool. But until I started supporting low-budget indie filmmakers, when seeing that there was people out there that were actually taking their movies and making bootleg copies of it, and as you see, it's progressed into digital, where people are taking taking our movies and making digital copies of them and putting them out there on streaming platforms that people can watch them illegally. It's not about an illegal or illegal thing. It's about it's hurting the creators. It's hurting the filmmakers.
I've released on VHS, released on DVDs, no Blu-rays, but DVDs. I've done streaming, YouTube, stuff like that. So pretty much everything when it comes down to it. I try to just get the films out there. To me, making money, that's a plus, but that's not my main goal. I just want to get my film out there so people can see it. Because then, I mean, once you get some notoriety behind your name and your films and stuff, then you can make some money. I mean, but I just try to market it, like on Facebook or YouTube, whatever. Just try to get the word out there, try to get some attention to it, and go from there. Really, that's my main goal, is just to get people to see it.
If I had an opportunity to release anything, I would definitely do DVD and Blu-ray and VHS. And if possible, do at least one streaming platform.
I did a self-release of it on Blu-ray and DVD and VHS. And now it's being released on a special edition 2-disc Blu-ray through Media City.
To actually get your film out there and get it noticed, it's becoming a little harder because the market's become flooded. It is. It's become flooded. It's hard to get your film noticed because there's just a glut. Everybody's out there making films. So the market's oversaturated now. A good example is Wild Eye Entertainment. You could have the best film now, but they're almost 2 years. They're 2 years backed up. So they have their release schedule is now backed up almost. Well, it's getting now almost close to 3 years. So they have their everything scheduled to be released up until 2024. So you could have the greatest film, but their release schedule is already booked up now until the beginning of 2024. So that shows you how much the market is just oversaturated.
I've never spent anything on marketing, really, to be honest. I've never spent a dime on anything. It's just one good thing about social media is you can promote your stuff for free. So that's usually what I do. I'll make posts about it, hoping that people look at it, watch a trailer or whatever. I've had some films in the past in some film festivals. Severed Film Festival. I've had 3 or 4 movies shown at those. I don't think they do those anymore, those festivals. I did submit one to New York Film Festival 15 years ago. I believe it was shown. I couldn't go to it. I had to pay to put it in. That was kind of a pain in the ass, but it was worth it. Other than that, though, I haven't really put very many in. Just a handful. Conventions are good if you can go find a table, and promote your own stuff. I've never done it, but I know I've had some releases by a couple of guys that have went to conventions and they sell, the DVDs or whatever. So it's always good, obviously. I mean, you get it there and people can see it in person and grab a copy if they can. So yeah, conventions are fun.
I think a good way to market a film and make sure people are seeing it is online ads, word of mouth, attending conventions, and just really hustling and getting the name out there for your film. I think that's something to whenever you are creating a marketing plan, that you need to look at what the pricings are going to be for your ideas and then come up with a budget. At this time, I don't have a budget number. I think film festivals are definitely a good way to get your film out there. The people that attend those, they're there because they love indie filming, and what better way to, you know, um, share your product is in festivals. I think that's a good way to, like I said, kind of hustle and talk one-on-one with potential customers, and at least get people to look at the product.
And it's not about money at all for me. I never break even on a film, and nor do I try. It is nice to get paid and compensated for your work, and that's why I won't go through some film companies, because I think that right now is a trend with the film companies saying hey, we're putting out your film, but we're not going to pay you. Just be happy we're putting out your film, and I think that's fucking bullshit. An artist and their crew should be paid for their work, especially if a company is distributing it. Just don't go out there and I'm not going to have somebody make money on my films and not compensate me. I mean, I'd rather somebody upload it on a torrent site and watch it for free than somebody make money on it or post it on YouTube.
Now, one part of that question was marketing. I'm about to give you a formula that I learned as a distributor that most people do not know or will tell you. If you make an independent movie and you are lucky enough to be offered a distribution deal, most of the distributors out there will say, we will market your film, and a lot of independent filmmakers will take that thinking that marketing will be covered. The definition of marketing in the distributors' minds is taking their time to get it into the channels such as Tubi and to Hulu, and to get them onto the Redbox and get them into Walmart.com, etc. That is their definition of marketing, the act of taking it to those channels through their resources or their back channels to get them placed. The filmmaker, however, hears marketing in the idea of Hollywood marketing, which is billboards being placed, social media ads being spent, and all over the place seeing their film everywhere, so it's in the conscious of everybody doing whatever they do. It's on the radio, etc., so that they will get their film as much exposure as possible. That is not the case, and I have to say that loudly and with emphasis. There are two different perceptions of marketing. Hollywood marketing, what the studios do, is they spend 9-to-1 on every movie they make. So let's look at that. If they are making a $1 million movie, they are spending $100,000 to shoot it and $900,000 to market it. Thus the $1 million movie. With this $1 million movie, they expect to make a 3-to-1 return. So they are going to spend $1 million to get back $3 million, and that will be their definition of a successful movie. They use distributors too. The distributors do their marketing like I just described. They take Hollywood movie, they place it on networks. It has been placed and they have done their job. Hollywood's marketing, the studio marketing, kicks in to get the customers and the public mindset into buying the movie and driving the movie there. So I'd say that to independent filmmakers who wonder why they turn their films over to distributors and then all of a sudden it may sell a few to their friends, but they're not getting any money. Well, that's because they did their part placing it, but they're expecting you, the studio, to have also spent 9-to-1 on your marketing. So if you're making a $10,000 movie, they're expecting $90,000 of advertising so that you can get your $300,000 return. So if a filmmaker doesn't have that, which most independent films don't, we ourselves have to rely on our own networking, our social media, our showing up at conventions, entering a bunch of film festivals, and actually attending the film festivals, networking with people, passing out cards with download links, etc. That was one of the reasons I even got into distribution myself, was that people just simply needed to know that. I made a model up where it was an 80-20 split. Filmmaker gets 80% of whatever we get, and we get 20 with no expenses. And that's, regular distributors don't do that. They embed expenses because they have an office, they have to go to the Cannes Film Festival, they have to go to the AFM, and they appear to be doing great work for your film. But in the end, It's already having the relationships where they can ingest them to these stations, and then the stations will play them. But whether or not your film gets the traffic is still up to you. The distributor does not push that traffic. The distributor gets it to the networks. So understanding that at the beginning, and if I can help any independent filmmaker that way, at least know that, because that may help prevent you from having a bad deal with some distributor, that even if they do their job, you still might not get paid because they take expenses out to do the job of placing the film.
Where do I think low budget or micro budget filmmaking is going to go from here? The future of it. I think it is, of course, going to carry on. I think it's something that is more prevalent in this day and age. I think it can happen more often. And we have things on social media like content creators that are making these short little, everything from like 1 minute second spots to we have a lot of people that are out there making short films, anything that could be like 7 minutes long to 15 minutes long. So I of course think that micro and low budget filmmaking is going to continue. With things like Amazon and the availability to buy equipment, whether it be cameras or lighting or sound, very much available to everybody. I think it's something that makes this day and age very much easy and more accessible for anybody to go out and make a film. Whether or not that's going to be the case, I guess we'll have to see. The future, I think the landscape's going to change a little bit. Of course, over the last couple of years, streaming is gone quite big. Now, of course, you can still rent your Netflix DVDs and get them in the mail. But even that's probably not going to last much longer because availability of streaming. Because I can sit down on my couch and I can press a few buttons, and instead of having to go out to the store or go rent a VHS or something like that, I can just do it from the comfort of my own home. Now, as people that enjoy watching low budget or indie filmmakers, which might be you, imagine many people that are watching this right now are big proponents or fans of physical media. So I do believe wholeheartedly that micro and low budget filmmaking is going to continue. Of course, whether no money is being made at all, as long as someone can pick up a camera and point it, aim it, turn it on, have a couple friends around, these movies are going to continue to be made, which is very heartwarming. It feels really good to know that is something that's going to continue to be made. So, but just remember that if you are streaming something and you're not doing it legally, please don't do that. That's not cool. So, and hopefully you can have a good understanding of where we're coming from when we say, support us. There's multiple ways you can support us, and one of which is buying that physical media from us. But if you have the opportunity to stream it online, since we live in a day and age where you can do it from your couch, it may cost $2.99 to rent our shit movie. But that $2.99, the little bit that comes out of it that will come our way is going to be put into the next movie. So we can make the next shit movie. So, but where am I going to be in the next 5 years? Hopefully I'm still going to continue making movies. I think I'm going to continue to not just hone in on my craft on the available equipment that I have now, and the equipment I have in the future, but just like I did with doing things like getting my Part 107 for a drones license to be able to fly an unmanned aircraft and get some beautiful buttery footage for things like establishing shots. I'd like to see the technology of the future and see what possibly I could get into doing next that can make a better viewing experience for those out there, for you out there that are watching these movies. So,
oh man, I think the future's bright for micro budget filmmaking. I mean, almost anybody can make a movie nowadays. You got an iPhone or a smartphone, you can go and pretty much make your own movie, for nothing. I mean, I kind of look at some of these people like it's not everybody can make a movie. You have to be creative. You have to have some ideas. You have to have the passion to make it. You know, some people go into it for all the wrong reasons, and that's not the way to do it. I mean, you go into it, you have fun, you're not worried about money, you're not worried about this and that. But I think it's bright. It's a bright future for microfilmmaking because, like I said, you can pick up a phone, you can go get a camera, and go out there and film something and have fun. And it's so much easier these days to do it because you can put it online, get people to watch it. You know, it's just it's these days are pretty good, I think, for that.
The future of micro budget filming is actually going to be easier as time goes on. Because of technology, there are so many things that we can do now with minimal equipment that, you know, couldn't be done years prior. So I think it's going to be a lot more accessible, and you're going to see a lot more of it.
So, you know, it's been a great experience. You know, I don't know how long I'll be doing independent films for. You know, I'd love to do more, but I'm getting older and it's harder to do, and it's harder to get people to do stuff, especially working for free. And, you know, it's kind of, the scene is kind of saturated now. The independent film scene is saturated, and there's like a lot of independent and underground filmmakers that are just pumping out garbage, in my opinion. And
Well, micro-budget filmmaking is, in my opinion, has two paths. On one hand, we are going to embrace the technologies that are out there, and our films are going to look more and more and more professional and closer to what you see in the Hollywood big-budget films. That's the approach that I would like to embrace, using the technologies at hand, the software that we have access to, the visual effects packages that we have, and the general expertise level that our, quote, amateur folks are getting just by working on these projects. Now, the other fork is a less professional situation. It's because the price of technology is cheap. Anybody can go out and grab a camera or rent even a red camera for less than $500 a week and go out and think they're filmmakers. And having an expensive piece of equipment does not make you good. So I think you will start seeing a glut of content made by unprofessional filmmakers who do not honor the craft. And then what will happen there is, once again, distributors will come into play to serve as a middleman between the channels that play films and the independent filmmaker. What we saw a few years ago was independent filmmakers having direct access to channels such as Tubi to load their content on. Now that does not exist because too many poorly shot films are going to Tubi. Now you must use a middleman because of that situation. So that is what I think is going to be happening more of. So you'll have great quality films that are cheaper to produce, made by people who care about the craft, and then you'll have people that just want to jump on the bandwagon of making any film, regardless of the quality, because they can access cheap equipment and try to throw something together. But in the end, shit is shit.
Sure, it's to me it is a hobby. I'm not making really any money off this. My main goal is just to break even if possible. But I do it for the passion. I do it because I love doing it. We're creating art. I'm creating art. This is a legacy. Just think, and I say this to every filmmaker, every actor out there, actress, just think, when we're gone, we're no longer on this earth, somebody's going to be popping in a DVD, someone's going to be streaming us, and they're going to be watching us in a film. It's almost like a form of immortality. This is our legacy.
With that said, I would just like to say, if you're thinking about getting into filmmaking, make sure that you go out, hop on Amazon, hop on eBay, hop on Best Buy, get yourself, I mean, it doesn't have to be something expensive, just get a little action cam, get something that's, say, around $100, get something that's $30. Use your iPhone, use your Android phone. You can make these movies, you can get them done. And I think it's infectious. You'll like it, you'll enjoy it, and you'll continue to want to make more. And you'll also maybe have a good appreciation or understanding of those of us that are currently making films, low budget and micro budget films.
Any advice I'd have for somebody is just have the passion. Have the passion to do it. Don't go into it for the wrong reason. Don't go into it because you want to be famous. Don't go into it because you want to make money. You need to have some passion. And you don't even really have to have much influence. It's just have a desire to go make your own movie. If it's a horror movie, it's a comedy, if it's a romance, whatever. Like you go into it because you want to make something, because you have an idea, you have a creative idea that you want to put in front of the camera, and that's the real reason to do it. That's the right reason, and just have fun with it, really. Will I continue? Yeah, I hope so. I haven't done anything in a year or two since I believe the last one was a paranormal documentary. That was the first feature-length movie I did, so that kind of burnt me out a little bit. But I'm all for even just helping others make movies. If I'm running the camera or doing some effects, that's fine. Because to me, it's just fun to go on set and be there with a crew and make something and watch it later. As far as any future plans I have for myself, for my own movies, I have some ideas, but nothing concrete, nothing, I have planned for next week or anything. So it's just kind of go with the flow and see how everything goes. I'd like to be in 5 years. Oh man, I'd love to be in a mansion. No, I just, hey, I'd be happy in 5 years if I'm still doing the same thing and having fun with friends making films.
Don't be afraid to start small with what you know, with who you know, to get practice on, the whole process of the filming, of the editing, of the effects, of casting. Don't bite off more than you can chew. And once you get a feel for it, then, make your next project a little bigger. But definitely don't be afraid to start small, even if it's something as simple as a short. I've mentioned that I have not got to direct or create or bring my ideas to life yet. But I have full intentions on doing so and continuing to do so. I think in 5 years, I would like to, again, continue. I'd like to have some more projects under my belt, but with that, at least bringing one of my ideas to life. So that would be directing it and putting it out there.
You definitely surround yourself with a crew that shares your same vision and your ideas. And that's the best advice I could give people if they ever want to make a film. Just go out and do it and find people that share the same passion as you do, people that like the same kind of films that you do, and go out and do something. Write a script or come up with an idea and just go out and shoot.
I think that it's worth your time reading about professional filmmaking, reading about editing. Don't just go on YouTube and watch a few videos, but there are actual books out there and look at their ratings to see how many reviews that they've had. But there are quality books on editing and filmmaking. And the reason I'm saying editing a few times here is to drive home the point. Maybe you start from the editing side of things first to see what they expect. Because one of the pieces I found when studying editing was that the human eye sees so many different things every second. They see hundreds of things. And therefore, to make a film feel natural, you need to cut away every so many seconds or milliseconds so that it looks natural. A lot of mistakes that an amateur filmmaker might have or a first-time filmmaker might have is they'll stay focused on one person for a long period of time. You may have a 5-minute scene and that scene doesn't cut away. Or that and to think about this, you've seen parents film their child's football game or basketball game on a steady camera, and you start watching it, it never cuts away. And those sporting events are so much more boring to watch than watching something that's been professionally cut on television like ESPN that swaps through scenes, jumps to the commentator, goes into the action, comes back. So research, if you're a first-time filmmaker, look at the editing and look at the very best editing techniques. And keep in mind, as a first-time filmmaker, you need to cover those shots. So therefore, It's not just setting the camera out. The guy does 1 or 2 takes and good, we're done. Let's go to the next set. You do 1 or 2 takes of that angle. You do 1 or 2 takes of this angle. So you might do 12 minimum takes at different angles of every single scene.
Well, there you have it. That's the end. You've heard all the stories. You've heard the information. You maybe have wrote some notes down. I highly suggest that you did. And that's it. That's the end of our journey. Now it's up to you. If you're going to make a movie, start researching, go do it, and have fun. Most importantly, have fun. Well, till next time, see you later.